Welcome to the Power of Purity podcast, the show that empowers men to experience their sexual gift in a healthier way. Now here's your host, Tony Ingracia.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Power of Purity podcast, and thank you so much for being with me today. And as we begin today's episode, I pray that you are in a place where you're strong with God, and you're pushing into God and pursuing God and continuing forward on your pathway of purity. So God bless you for being here. And I do believe that today's episode is going to be a great blessing to you because I have a very special guest, and his name is William. And I'm just going to introduce William by his first name today because where he is in his life and story and journey, he just would appreciate a little bit of anonymity in his story, and I think you'll understand that as he begins to share his story with us. But I know he has an incredibly powerful story, and I heard just a little bit of it, and when I did, I approached him and asked him if he would consider being a guest on the podcast. And he prayed about it, he talked to his wife about it, and he said that he would be a guest. So I'm very, very grateful, and I have no doubt that his story will be a blessing and an encouragement to many of you and to me. So let me just start by saying, hey, William, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you for asking me.
I have no doubt that your story is going to be a blessing, and I know just a little tiny baby version of it, so I can't wait to hear kind of for you to flesh it out and kind of hear more of your story. So I'm really excited for that. But in the way of introduction, maybe I can just say, and by the way, I want to mention that just so our listeners know it, I literally am just getting over the flu. My wife and I got sick together this past weekend. We actually got sick, believe it or not, on Valentine's Day together, which was kind of terrible. But my wife was babysitting one of our granddaughters who was sick and apparently got it from her, influenza A, and I got it from Sherry, so we got sick together, and I literally had a 104-degree temperature. So I'm just kind of coming back to the land of the living, so I'll do my best here. But just a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go on a men's retreat, which was totally awesome. And I met William at this men's retreat, and he was actually not an attendee. He was one of the staff members at this retreat, facilitating this retreat. And there were actually 29 men on the retreat, and I think there were about 29 or 30 staff members, almost one staff member per attendee. Is that correct, William?
Yeah, that's usually how we do it. And I think I think that it was 30 or 31. It was somewhere around there.
Which is totally awesome because there's just a high level of attention given to the attendees then.
Yeah.
And it's just totally awesome the way that you guys do this. And I guess it's okay if I say the name of the retreat, right?
Yeah, I think so.
For anybody that might want to check it out, it's a men's retreat that's called Edge Venture. And I would highly recommend it. They have a website, so just go check it out, Edge Venture. And I'll just say this, that it's different than any men's retreat I've ever been to in my life. It's not a retreat where you go and you sit and there's speakers and you take notes. And it's a transference of information and cognition and teaching and theology. So it's not like a head thing.
Yeah.
It's designed to be a very interactive retreat. And there's a lot of different things that happen, and it's very awesome and beautiful and unexpected. And so anyway, that's where I met William. And at the very beginning of the retreat, the opening night, they did this kind of unusual thing, and they asked each man to stand up and say your name and say one thing that you don't want anyone to know about you, which is kind of a loaded question if you think about it, because wait a minute, if I don't want anybody to know this about me, then why do I have to say it out loud, you know? So that's kind of an introduction to what you're in for this weekend. So a couple of the staff members stood up and modeled this, and when it was William's turn, William stood up and said, "My name is William, And the thing that I don't want you to know about me is that I lived in the gay lifestyle for 10 years. Is that correct? That's what you said, right?
That is correct. Yeah, I guess labels are a big thing for me. So I did call myself that, but now that I look back, I don't really say that. So to be exact, I said homosexual lifestyle.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you corrected that because that's very important. So, of course, I was intrigued by that, and I don't know how much you know about me, William, but our listeners know that, the deepest brokenness of my life was around the sexual area of my life.
hmm
Jesus said the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So we know that there's an enemy who literally wants to destroy our lives. And without a doubt, the primary way that evil attempted to destroy my life was through my wounded and broken sexual self.
hmm
And although I didn't understand it for many years, I eventually came to understand that I myself had a sexual addiction. And it did almost destroy my life and my marriage, my family. And so I know that sexuality is an area where so many people are so deeply and profoundly broken, and an area where the devil is trying to steal, kill, and destroy,
Yeah.
So when I heard just that little introduction, and you said that you lived for 10 years in the gay lifestyle, I thought, wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And now you're married, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So that speaks of just an amazing, significant transition in your life. And so I just couldn't help but be curious. And since I do this podcast, and it's along the theme of sexuality and sexual brokenness and allowing God to heal our hearts and lives and our brokenness, I thought, wow, I'd love to hear more of William's story. And so that's why I approached you and asked you if you'd be willing to be a guest. So thank you.
Thank you.
I don't quite know where to begin. I guess I just would like to hear more of your story. So are you willing to just kind of talk and share with us and help us understand your journey, your story? And I might have some questions along the way.
Yeah. So you stop me if you have questions, or if if I'm talking too much, because there is a lot. So feel free to stop me whenever, or if you can't hear me, so if something happens. But really, I believe that all of us have gifts and talents that we're born with. There are things that we're born with that God gives us. But I don't really know if sexuality is one of those things that we're born with. And a lot of people say it, but for me, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, I don't believe that it was. I believe that I was born with gifts and talents. I'm artistic and creative, which everyone's creative, but that's a whole another podcast probably that I could rant for an hour about. Because some people believe they are and some people believe that they aren't. But I think, especially where I grew up in a small town, you're labeled as the creative one, or the sensitive one, or the or the feminine one. If you don't wear camo, if you don't enjoy hunting, if you're not really great at football, you're not, you're automatically a girl or gay. And
so are you saying there that from a young age, William, you just kind of almost didn't fit in with the other guys or something?
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely didn't fit in. I remember specifically in second grade when I first realized that people thought I was different. Before then, it really, you just don't have a self-awareness, I guess, when you're that young. But I don't really remember any time before second grade. But I remember this specific event. I was sitting in the corner of the classroom, and my best friend, that was a guy, I don't even remember exactly what he said, but he was embarrassed to be around me, and I knew it. And then after that, it was like every day, all day, being made fun of, being called gay. I didn't even know what gay was, and I do remember liking girls. I remember up until, I don't know, 19 or 20. I thought, I'm going to marry a girl. There were lots of girls that I was into, but I, was rejected a lot by girls, I guess, because I was different, even though they liked me and they wanted to be friends with me. I guess none of them wanted to date me. And so I remember just, I don't know exactly when it happened, but I think slowly over time, this wall just built up between me and girls. And I also didn't have relationships with men. I didn't have a relationship with my dad. He did live at home, but we were never close. We rarely talked. When we did, it was, short. And he was always angry. And I love my dad, so I'm not blaming him. But I didn't, at some point, I think I decided internally I didn't want to be with a woman because they're just going to reject me. And they're bossy and they're dramatic. These are the things that I told myself because these are the things that I saw my whole life. But that I did want to be with a man because and it's this internal need that I think all of us have, to be close with the same sex. But because I couldn't get close to them, I think I sexualized it. It was almost like this fantasy, like, started building in me, and I still believe that we need intimacy. Men need intimacy together with each other. I don't think that I'm wrong in saying that, but just the fact that I never had it, it was completely not a possibility for me at all. Even in the normal, quote unquote, normal ways that boys have it when they're young, I never had that because boys they never wanted to be around me. And I think once or twice I kind of sort of got a glimpse of it, as far as being close to guys, but it was usually when we were alone, and then when we were in public, they didn't want anybody to know that we were really friends. So it was kind of always this secret thing. And so then when I moved away for college.
Can I just make a comment there? I just am observing. I can't imagine how difficult that was for this young boy in second grade, how overwhelming and confusing that must have been.
Yeah.
To already be identifying this sense or having this feeling that something's wrong with me. Nobody likes me. I'm different.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that provoked for this little boy? Was it like a sense of shame or embarrassment? Like, was there self-contempt? Like, I hate myself. I'm a bad boy. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, I think eventually, slowly it started growing this dislike of myself, and I do remember being sad in that moment. And then I remember kind of another milestone was I think it was about fourth grade. And I always kind of dressed different, as at least when I was picking out my own clothes, I would pick out stuff that I liked and kind of be creative and kind of be different. And then in fourth grade, people had made fun of me for so long. There was one specific instance where this girl, I literally heard her say, "Oh God, what is he wearing today?" And it was like, it was like this click in my brain, like, okay, I'm not going to try anymore to be different or to just be myself. It wasn't that I was trying to be different. It was that I was just trying to be myself. And so when I overheard her say that, because I think she said it to somebody else, but she didn't care that I heard. And so when she said that, I decided I'm wearing exactly what everyone else is wearing. I'm going to do the best that I can to just blend in and kind of be almost invisible.
Try to conform, but toward the purpose of acceptance and fitting in, so I'm not weird and people don't make fun of me and reject me. And wow.
Yeah, so it sucked. Yeah, it definitely sucked.
Man, that's profoundly difficult, William. I can't imagine what that was like.
Yeah, it was tough. And I mean, I think so many people go through it, and it's really unfortunate. And I didn't have the best home life either. So I really, my parents did the best they could. So I'm not blaming them in any way, but, I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel safe at school. I just never, ever, ever, ever felt comfortable or safe at all.
You didn't fit in any place.
No, there was nowhere. I mean, I got made fun of at home, by my brothers, and it was kind of I feel like anytime I did have a semi relationship with a guy, it was, he would like me in private and we could actually kind of bond just a little bit, but then in public there was no chance because, he didn't want people to think differently of him, and so that's kind of one thing I got from my brother. And so that was hurt that I carried with me for a long time too. And he and I actually talked about it last year. The Lord led me to have a conversation with him about that because I had been carrying that for years and years. So,
And was that a redemptive conversation?
it was, and we don't live near each other, so it's not like we're best friends now and seeing each other every day. And there's quite an age difference too. But I feel like it's on its way to being much better, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, God's in the business of redemption, and God has a way of healing and redeeming broken and wounded relationships, so thanks be to God.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so where do we continue from here in your story?
I think that, oh yeah, so I went to college and I started, I got online then. I had never, I mean, I think we had a computer at home, or I know we had a computer at home, but we didn't really, I don't even think we had the internet. So then I go to college and discover the internet, and, really I wanted connection, I joined a fraternity when I went to college, and that filled a big gap, I think, that was in me, but it's still, I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship with a guy. I didn't know how to be myself. But then I started getting on chat rooms, and I really don't even know how it started, honestly, but I got on chat rooms and started connecting with men, and I couldn't even see what they looked like. It was literally just sitting there, almost like I was texting someone, but I for the first time I felt connected to someone else, and then we had this thing in common that we, I'd never really sexualized it, I guess, but I think I was called gay so much by this time I had learned what gay was. And yes, I did, there were guys that I was attracted to, but I think attraction is very, it can be, it's not just sexual. There are many ways of being attracted to people, and I think even now there are guys that I'm attracted to, the fact that he's a great father, or I'm attracted to, his spirituality, or how great of a husband he is, or, and then there's guys that, I'm attracted to how athletic they are, or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be sexual, but I think when I met these guys, and then the whole gay label had been put on me, it's kind of like the pieces, even though they weren't the correct puzzle, it's like they were being put together. And so really, I just wanted the closeness, but the hooking up is what came along with it. And of course, we're guys, I mean, sex is sex, and I think that, while I enjoyed it, and it was, it definitely fed my flesh, and it was great. I really think that the thing that I really, really wanted was just the connection and the intimacy. And but the label had also been placed on them, so a lot of them didn't want to be in public with me, and I didn't want to be in public with them. I didn't want people to actually have proof, that I was gay. So it was still this like secretive connection that I had with men.
I understand.
Yeah, and then it kind of turned into, that kind of gives you an adrenaline rush too. I mean, I don't, there are probably people that are listening to this that have cheated on spouses or whatever, and there's like an adrenaline rush that goes along with that. And so it's almost like, you're cheating on your regular lifestyle by going out and doing these things. You're getting your connection, you're getting your fix, and then you get out.
One comment, it doesn't surprise me. I think it's very powerful and significant what you're saying about this kind of deep longing that you had for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't surprise me because that's literally the way God made us.
I know, exactly.
God made us to know and to be known. He made us relational creatures. I think that's what it means when it says that we were made in the image of God. Because God himself is relational. God was in eternal relationship with himself, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And so God decides at some point, let's make a creature that we can be in relationship with. So we'll make this creature in our image. In the image of God, he made them. Male and female, he made them. So it's like God made us relational creatures. So we have this deep, profound longing and need to be connected deeply and profoundly with others, to be accepted, to be seen, to be known, to be vulnerable, to be present to others, to be connected to others. So it's like we're desperate for that. You've got to find it somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And it feels like you had been so lonely. It feels like there was this profound loneliness around you for so many years. Do I understand, though, from what you've shared so far, that you hadn't acted out as a gay person up all the way up until you went to college?
Yes, that's correct. So I was probably 20 when I started acting out, and I mean, teenagers are confused anyway. So I mean, it makes sense that your hormones are going crazy, and there's a lot of confusing changes that go on, and so there were a few times that really, because of me desiring that connection, like I learned how to masturbate. Obviously, like I don't even really know how it just happened. I mean, how does anybody learn how to masturbate?
Right.
So I did learn how to do that, and of course, I have these like longings and these desires to just be intimate with men, and so those wires got crossed. I mean, I'm gonna think about the things that I guess excite me when I'm masturbating.
So you would need to fantasize about men in order to masturbate.
Yeah.
So it was very much that proclivity within you that was kind of your orientation or desire or proclivity from adolescence, from puberty. It kind of followed you through your teenage years, although you never acted out on it until you got to college.
Correct. Yeah. And like I said, I remember being into girls for a long time, and I would, fantasize about girls too. So it was never, I remember it, and I don't know, I can't say that for every guy that struggles with same-sex lust, but I remember liking girls.
Did you ever think to yourself, well, maybe I'm bisexual because I like guys and girls?
Yeah, I don't even think I knew that was a thing. Until probably after I had started like hooking up with guys, because I mean, it was really, I think by the time I got to college, like there were already these walls up against women, that just couldn't be broken down without Jesus. And I mean, I wasn't a Christian. I grew up in church, but I do remember, early on, just refusing to get saved because I saw so many people get saved and then they still were doing stupid stuff, and I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So I'd never gotten saved, and so these walls were there.
Can I ask right there, in the essence of that, from what I heard you say, was essentially rejection. You had felt a kind of rejection from females.
Yeah. All
the way back to first, second, third grade. And so this rejection was so hurtful.
Yeah.
Like females were rejecting you. So in a sense, you put up a wall and rejected females.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like one of those things you can't really explain, because why would I, why would I put up the wall against women but not men? But I think for me, and I'll never understand everything. Maybe, when I get to heaven, there's going to be plenty of questions that I have. But I really and truly believe, when you're like 5 years old or 6 years old, you think girls are gross, and I think that's not a good thing. But I believe that when we're born as a male, we have this innate desire to be around other males. And I think the fact that that was just never satisfied, and that was there, that desire, I feel like, was there before um the girl desire was. I feel like maybe that's why it was easier for me to put up walls against girls than it was boys, because because this thing over here was there to begin with, so. And I don't know if there's any psychological type, you know proof that that even exists, but for me, that's what I believe. Because desire for male companionship comes first, or it did for me, and then the girls came after. But so yeah, I definitely just I put up walls, and just and girls, at that point in college, girls did want to be with me, and so the way that the world looked at me kind of changed during college, because I also like started drinking a lot, and I started doing drugs, and people looked at me differently, because those substances changed the way I was. Now I did, it did allow me to loosen up some, and I did become, I think, more of, I think my personality that the Lord gave me kind of did come out more then, because that was dealing, not really dealing, but that was kind of putting a band-aid on some anxiety that I had, so so I think the way the world looked at me changed when I went to college, and so that was great. But again, it was just a band-aid. It wasn't like I was being healed from the hurt,
Can I ask a question here? You mentioned that you grew up in church. I'm curious, were you a spiritual person at this point? How did your faith inform you? Did your faith cause you to struggle with these feelings that you were having and this proclivity that you had? Did you have a sense, this is wrong, this is sin, I shouldn't be like this, what's wrong with me? I mean, how did your faith engage with everything you were going through at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a little bit of information about God and Christianity, but most of my information came from the people that I was around, and none of them, in my opinion, acted like Christians should act. Um, just gossipy, and just mean to each other, and just very, very negative. So it really wasn't something that I even wanted to be around. So I do believe that, going to church, I did pick up some things, but really my idea of how things and how life should be was just based on what I saw around me. So I don't know that I had faith. I don't know that I.
So it feels like your faith was not really strong at this point. It wasn't really like a guiding light for you at this time.
No. Okay. And I do, but I do believe God uses everything. So I mean, He was there the whole time, but I just wasn't. I definitely wasn't listening to Him for sure. So it, yeah. If anything, I think going to church, or at least that particular place that I grew up in, while I did have some foundations, I think for the most part it did more harm than good.
I see. Okay, so where do we go from here? You're in college, you're away from home, so you've kind of crossed an important threshold, kind of what we would call the flesh barrier.
Yeah.
You're actually entering into acting out now. Yeah. With other guys, having sexual experiences with other men. So where does your story go from here?
So after college, I did, for the first few months, I moved away from the place that I was in college. So kind of even a bigger city than I was. So kind of like small town, then a little bit bigger, and then a bigger town.
Can I just ask a question here?
Yeah.
And that is, at this point, would you say that in your own heart and mind, you just are accepting the fact, I'm a gay man, I'm a homosexual?
So I don't think I 100% accepted it. So when I did move after college, I initially told people that I was bi. And even though I really didn't think that, at that point, I had pretty much, I was pretty much disgusted by women at that point. and I had, started hooking up with guys, and so, but I didn't want to say I was gay because I felt like maybe it would be, people would accept me a little bit more if they knew I still liked girls. So I claimed to be bi at first. Um, just I hadn't accepted it, to answer your question. But it didn't really take too long because of the friends that I made really quick. Um, were very okay with that lifestyle. Like, they were okay with the drugs, they were okay with the alcohol, they accepted me. And this was really, college, I did change and people looked at me differently, but after college, I really felt like these people understand me. So I met guys that, you know, were gay, or, were at least okay with the lifestyle. I
Right. It
met
makes
girls that
makes
were
total
okay with.
sense. Yeah, you're gonna find a community of people that are like minded and that approve and accept of
Hmm.
the way you're living and the way they're living, and
Yeah, and it was great. I loved it. I didn't. I thought this was the best thing in the world. And
so now you're free to be William. You get to
yeah,
be who you are, and
yeah. I was who I thought I was. I didn't know any better. So it wasn't very long. I'm definitely more of a relationship person. I mean, I definitely had my random hookups, and did a lot of stupid stuff. But to me, I'm just more of a relationship person, and so it didn't take long for me to find a boyfriend. Um, and it was it was back and forth. I believe that if two people aren't both chasing the Lord, I mean, there's going to be a lot of problems.
heck yeah, man, it's hard to have successful relationship with God. It's hard
I
enough,
know, yeah.
let alone without the Lord. Can you imagine?
I know. So it was, and it wasn't just based on sex. I mean, it was definitely the connection that I wanted and the friendship, and we did laugh a lot. So that lasted about 3 years.
I'm glad to hear that, because one of my questions on my list I was going to ask is, kind of like, what did it look like? Were you in a monogamous homosexual relationship with one man for an extended period of time? Or did you have many, many partners? So your inclination was to be in a relationship with one guy, if you could,
Yeah,
and you did have a 3-year relationship.
yeah, and I had others after that, but I mean, for me at least, they were monogamous. I don't know if each of these relationships, if they were faithful to me, but I was, and that's just kind of, you know that is just kind of something that I would not have felt right about, cheating on them. Um, so yeah, as far as I was concerned, they were definitely monogamous relationships.
So that relationship came to an end,
Hmm.
and you're now several years at least into this lifestyle. So where do you go from here?
So, really, it's just a cycle. I have friends on Facebook that um, that are in the lifestyle, and I see the same thing over and over again. I see them, they're super excited and they start posting pictures of them and their new boyfriend, and then, after a certain amount of time, 6 months to like 3 years or something, somebody cheats on somebody, something terrible happens, and then they're completely off the grid for a while, and then they come back and they have a new boyfriend. And so that's really what it was to me, or in my situation, it was really the same thing. So it's like, it's really just this roller coaster of emotions always. And it's literally just when you let your flesh, you know, drive the car, you're just all over the place. And that's what I was doing. It was literally just my flesh. So after I was done with him, I kind of had my wild phase, and I would just kind of hook up with random people, and I would go to different cities, and we would go to the club, and I would, hook up with people that I'd never even seen before, and really all the while just wanting connection. That's all I wanted. So eventually I dated someone um, else, and I feel like it was more of I think he was more of a filler, I guess, if that's what you want to say. So I'm still hurt by that first relationship. I'm not fully over it, and so I find this other guy, and it's kind of like a, I guess like a rebound is what you would say.
Right.
And so then, I eventually kind of get over the first guy, but then I've, brought this other guy into the situation, and then of course he's brought all his baggage, and then, so then that ended, and so then there's, it's just like all this it's just over and over again, and
so this kind of just goes on for really years, because you said at the men's retreat you shared that you kind of lived this way for 10 years overall. Yeah. Can I ask at this point, had you come out to your family by this point? Had you actually officially come out?
No, so I actually, everyone I think in my life knew it, but that didn't mean I told everyone, if that makes sense. So like, I didn't really tell my family because I knew that they wouldn't approve. Now, growing up in a small town, I still believe that there's a lot of things that they are wrong about. But back then, this was one of those things they were wrong about. I believed at this point that it was okay, that was just the way that I was made, and that they were wrong.
They were wrong for not accepting you, you mean?
For their point of view, because really, the messages I got about being gay, a lot of them were from my family, and that it was, just different names, and just, sissy, or, fag, or queer, or, it was always these negative messages. So of course I'm not going to want to tell my family that I'm this thing, that this thing is that they hate. I mean, it's like the worst. I think I could have murdered someone, and they would have probably been more okay with that. And unfortunately, I even today, I think, not necessarily my family, but Christians in general, I think they're more okay if you're an alcoholic, or if you've murdered someone, or there's certain sins that it's almost like they don't think that God can do anything with. It's like, oh, being gay, like, oh, you're even at a small group. I mean, I love my church now, and I love everyone there. But this guy the other night said, I think he was talking about his uncle, and he said, he was a queer. I mean, to me, it's just such a like why are there certain groups of people that just can't get a break,
Right.
And so, and of course, people that are in the lifestyle are not I can't even talk now. So they're not going to want to come to church. When people in church say everyone's welcome, but then that is actually not true. It's only a certain amount of people. So so I never told them. I actually didn't tell my mom. And then I have, other close family members that I told toward the end of my lifestyle. So like, I kind of went through a breakdown toward the end of that 10 years. And so I finally did come out to them. But during the lifestyle, I did not.
And with that being said, you guys, I hate to do it, but I see from the clock that I'm way over for today's episode. So I'm going to jump in here to interrupt. But I invite you to come back next week, and I promise that if you do, you will be blessed to hear the remainder of William's story, because it is an amazing story of God's ability to heal and redeem. And I think his story is an amazing example that contradicts a very powerful lie that exists in our culture today, which essentially says that once a person is gay, they are always gay, because it's impossible to resist or change a person's sexual orientation. Or said another way, it would be impossible for a person who has a gay orientation to not live as a gay person. And it certainly would be impossible for that person to ever get married to a person of the opposite sex, and certainly to never have children. So William's story is absolutely amazing, and it reminds me of this scripture from 1 Corinthians chapter 6 that I think is incredibly significant. It says, beginning in verse 9, "Do you not know that the wicked will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor male prostitutes, nor homosexual offenders, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And that is what some of you were. Notice in the past tense. In other words, you used to be sexually immoral. You used to be an idolater. You used to be an adulterer. You used to be a prostitute. You used to be a homosexual. Paul says, and that is what some of you were, but you have been washed, you have been sanctified, and you have been justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our holy God. So praise be to God, the Scripture and the gospel and the blood of Christ informs us and teaches us that because we have lived a certain way in our past, we are not necessarily doomed to have to live that way the rest of our lives. And when Christ comes in, when God comes in, it's the fulcrum, the line of demarcation that changes everything and creates the possibility that we can become a completely new and different person because of Christ. Praise be to God. And William is a powerful example of that. So if you're able to come back next week, you're going to hear the rest of his story and how God showed up, how God interrupted his life and began to call him and woo him to himself, and how that worked out and what that looked like as Christ came into William's heart and life and began to change everything. So come back next week. You'll be blessed. I know you will. In the meantime, you guys, thanks for being with me today, and have an awesome week. Have an awesome day. Be blessed in Jesus' name, and I'll see you right back here next week. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening. Visit powerofpurity.org for more resources and information. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, please invite a friend to listen. Until next time, remember, there's power in purity.